You probably haven't given much thought to it, but something as basic as how we position ourselves when we sleep, it actually has a surprisingly long and fascinating history.
It really does. It seems so simple, just lying down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for this deep dive, we've gathered some really intriguing bits and pieces. We're talking, ancient medical scrolls, furniture design from centuries ago, even modern scientific research.
Right, a range.
Yeah. And our mission today is, well, to explore this enduring practice of sleeping with a slight elevation. We want to see what wisdom from the ages might still hold true for our well-being today.
It's a great point. We tend to think of sleep as just, closing our eyes for 8 hours, maybe.
Right.
But the posture we adopt while we're unconscious, it has a profound impact, really, on our physiology.
That makes sense.
And looking at this historical preference for sleeping at an angle gives us a unique perspective. It sort of connects what our ancestors might have intuitively known with what modern science is now starting to uncover.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's journey way back. We're talking over 4 millennia ago to ancient Egypt.
Okay. Where do we start there?
Well, we have evidence that Queen Hedifir's, she was the mother of the pharaoh who commissioned the Great Pyramid, Khufu.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Her bed had a distinct headrest and footboard. And apparently these weren't just decorative additions.
Ah, so they were built in, like part of the structure.
Seems like it, suggesting a deliberate elevation.
What's fascinating there is considering why. I mean, any ideas?
Well, some theories lean towards spiritual beliefs.
Spiritual, how so?
Elevating the head might have been seen as, aligning the sleeper with the cosmos, maybe aiding the soul's journey during sleep.
Huh. Interesting. It speaks to their deep connection between, well, the earthly and the celestial, right?
A sort of cosmic launch pad for dreamland.
Maybe. But surely there were practical reasons, too.
Oh, I think so. It strikes me that even practically a slight incline would have made sense back then.
Like what?
Better airflow, maybe in those ancient dwellings, a little barrier against ground-level pests, insects, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And maybe just a more comfortable position overall.
Yeah.
That feels like a pretty fundamental insight right there. Comfort and basic needs influencing how you sleep.
Exactly. And it's quite remarkable that their medical understanding also reflected this.
How so?
The Edwin Smith Surgical Papyrus, it's a very early medical text, really ancient.
Right, I've heard of it.
It actually advises elevating the head for patients with head injuries.
No kidding. Way back then.
Yeah. It suggests an early grasp of how body position could affect neurological recovery, maybe to manage swelling or pressure or something like that.
So a key early insight.
Mm.
Even then, they understood this direct link between body position and, well, brain health.
Seems that way.
So from the very beginning, we see this interesting duality,
Hmm?
the symbolic and the practical kind of coming together around how they slept.
It wasn't just about status or aesthetics, clearly.
No, there were real potential benefits, both seen and maybe unseen. Okay, now, let's move forward in time. To the classical world, Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome. Did this idea of inclined rest continue?
Yes, we see a continuation, definitely, though the context shifts somewhat.
How does it shift?
Well, sustained inclined sleep wasn't necessarily the standard way they slept every single night, it seems, but reclining at an angle, that was deeply embedded in their culture.
For what sort of things?
Activities like eating, socializing, even just resting during the day. Think of those iconic images of Roman emperors lounging on their couches.
Right, right. The whole reclining at banquets thing. Not exactly slumber, but definitely not flat on their backs either.
Precisely.
It makes you wonder if they noticed any benefits from that semi-reclined posture, even if they weren't consciously thinking about it for nighttime sleep.
It's possible. And it seems their medical thinkers were still considering the benefits of elevation.
Oh, really? Like who?
Well, Hippocrates, often called the father of modern medicine, he specifically recommended elevating the head for patients suffering from respiratory problems.
Okay, so breathing issues.
Exactly. And Galen, another incredibly influential physician of that era, he echoed this advice.
So multiple sources pointing to the same thing.
Yes. It shows an early medical understanding of how gravity can impact our breathing, making it easier when we're not completely horizontal.
That reinforces a crucial insight then. Yeah. Even in antiquity, the impact of gravity on bodily functions during rest was being recognized.
Absolutely.
Okay, so from Egyptian royalty to the medical wisdom of the classical world, this idea of elevating the upper body during rest seems to have persisted. Now let's leap forward again. Medieval and Renaissance periods.
Okay.
There's this popular image, isn't there, of nobles sleeping, basically sitting up because they were afraid of bad air near the ground.
Right.
How much truth is there to that?
Ah, yes. That's a fascinating myth. And, well, while nobles didn't generally sleep fully upright every night,
Right.
but it does reflect some of the realities of the time, particularly during serious disease outbreaks.
Like the plague.
Exactly. During plagues, like the sweating sickness, elevating the sick became a critical, though often desperate, strategy.
Why was that?
They observed that individuals who lay completely flat seemed to fare worse. So it wasn't a standard practice for everyone, more like a survival mechanism during really perilous times.
Wow. So not a general preference for comfort, but almost a last-ditch effort during widespread illness. That's a stark shift in the reason for that posture.
It really is. Beds even started being made shorter sometimes to better accommodate a more seated position.
Shorter beds, really?
Yeah. And there are accounts of attendants actually preventing patients from lying flat. They thought it was dangerous.
Gosh. And did this idea carry on after the immediate crisis?
It seems so. By the Renaissance, this practical observation, born out of crisis, began to solidify into medical recommendations. Physicians started prescribing elevated sleep, not just for breathing difficulties, but also to aid digestion.
That's really interesting. The connection to digestion comes up again. So a practical observation evolves into medical advice for everyday ailments.
Seems to be the case.
And it wasn't just the average person, was it? We have records of some pretty prominent figures adopting this.
Indeed. We do. King Louis XIV of France, for example.
Was Sun King.
The very same. And Queen Elizabeth I of England. Even the great Sir Isaac Newton.
Newton. What for?
They are all documented as having slept with their heads elevated to alleviate issues like indigestion, chronic coughs, things like that.
Huh. So it suggests that the potential benefits of inclined sleep were recognized across different social strata and for a variety of, well, common health concerns.
It really does seem that way.
It's quite a historical thread we're tracing here, from, spiritual significance in ancient Egypt to a survival tool in medieval times, and then a recognized remedy among European elites. Now, how does this evolve as modern medicine really takes hold in the 19th century?
Okay, this is where we see a more, let's say, scientific understanding emerge. The 19th century brought significant advancements in medical knowledge,
Right.
and the observation that lying flat worsens certain conditions became more clearly defined, medically defined.
How so?
This is when the term orthopnea entered the medical vocabulary.
Orthopnea. Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It specifically describes difficulty breathing when lying flat, and it was often linked to conditions like asthma, heart failure, bronchitis.
Ah, okay. So a medical term finally codifying what people had observed really for centuries.
Pretty much, yes.
And with this clearer understanding, the medical advice to sleep propped up became more formalized, more widespread for these specific conditions.
Absolutely, and this medical necessity, it spurred innovation.
Like what?
Well, the early 1900s saw the invention of the Gatch bed.
The Gatch bed, like the hospital beds.
Exactly, the precursor to modern hospital beds. It allowed for adjustable elevation of the head and legs. This was a significant step forward in patient care.
I can imagine.
And Fowler's position, that specific 45-degree incline, became a standard protocol in hospitals.
Why 45 degrees?
It was found to be particularly beneficial for improving breathing and also aiding recovery after abdominal surgeries.
Makes sense. And it seems some well-known figures of that era also embraced inclined sleeping.
They did.
Hmm.
Presidents William Howard Taft and Franklin D. Roosevelt, for instance.
Okay.
The brilliant inventor Thomas Edison, too. And the pioneering nurse Florence Nightingale.
Nightingale as well. Wow.
Yes, they were among those who either advocated for or personally utilized inclined sleeping for various health reasons. It was becoming increasingly accepted both within the medical community and among the general public.
So by the late 20th century, inclined sleep was a well-established medical practice, especially in hospital settings. But what about in our own homes? Which, brings us to Andrew K. Fletcher and his inclined bed therapy in the 1990s. What was his perspective?
Right, Fletcher. He took this long-standing principle, used mostly for specific medical conditions in hospitals.
Yeah.
And he proposed extending its benefits more broadly. His inclined bed therapy suggested raising the head of the entire bed.
The whole bed. Not just pillows or a wedge.
The whole bed frame, yes. By a relatively small amount, typically around 5 to 7 degrees.
Okay, that's not a huge angle.
No, quite subtle. But he claimed a range of benefits. Things like improved circulation, better digestion, enhanced neurological health, even reduced snoring.
Snoring too, okay.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that modern sleep research seems to be backing up some of these claims now, right? It's moving beyond just anecdotal evidence or historical observation.
Exactly. That's the crucial part. Contemporary studies have shown that elevating the upper body during sleep can indeed reduce nighttime acid reflux. That's a big one.
Definitely. Lots of people suffer from that.
And it can improve airflow for individuals with mild sleep apnea and lead to better oxygenation levels overnight.
So science is catching up to, or at least validating, some of this historical wisdom and Fletcher's ideas.
It seems so. While hospitals have long recognized the therapeutic value of inclined positioning for certain patients,
Right.
the potential advantages for a broader population are now being supported by scientific findings, which naturally begs the question.
Why isn't it more common?
Exactly. If it has such a long history and proven benefits in certain areas, why isn't inclined sleep more common in our everyday lives, in our homes? It highlights a potential disconnect, doesn't it, between established medical knowledge and common practice.
That's the key question, isn't it? And this is where our final piece of the puzzle comes in this company, Dreamvano. They seem to be taking this historical understanding and modern science and trying to bridge that very gap. The one between the adjustable hospital bed and our regular bedrooms.
Precisely. Dreamvana's approach seems to be integrating the advantages of inclined sleep into a modern mattress, but importantly, one that's aesthetically pleasing.
So not looking like medical equipment.
Right. Their aim is to provide these potential health benefits without needing bulky wedges or those sometimes awkward adjustable frames or, resorting to DIY solutions like stacking books under your bedpost.
Which probably isn't the safest idea anyway.
Probably not.
So they've essentially designed a full-length mattress with a subtle built-in incline, but one that's also meant to look and feel like a high-quality, comfortable mattress.
That seems to be the core idea, yes. It's
Uh,
design protected, apparently. A full-length incline built right in. They're drawing inspiration from this rich historical tradition, even referencing the practices of pharaohs, which we talked about,
right, bringing it full circle.
and combining it with current scientific understanding. The goal is to create a sleep solution focused on alleviating common issues like acid reflux, snoring, and general sleep disturbances.
And they position it as more than just fixing problems, right?
Yes, they talk about achieving better overall health, deeper recovery, and what they term an elevated living experience, starting with how you sleep. It really does bring the historical journey full circle, doesn't it?
It truly does. From, you know, ancient civilizations intuitively understanding the benefits of elevation, perhaps for different reasons, to a modern company applying that wisdom with scientific backing to try and improve our sleep today. It makes you really consider this long history and whether this seemingly simple shift in sleep posture might hold some significant keys to our well-being, especially now in the 21st century.
Yeah, this deep dive into the history of inclined sleep, it really reveals that what might seem like a novel idea or maybe just a hospital thing actually has roots stretching back millennia.
It's quite humbling, really.
It encourages us to think that sometimes the insights of the past, when we look at them through the lens of modern science, can offer surprisingly relevant solutions for our contemporary lives.
So maybe sleeping completely flat isn't the default, it seems.
Well, perhaps the long-held habit of sleeping completely flat is the real deviation from a much older human tradition, and maybe exploring just a slight incline could offer you, the listener, benefits you haven't even considered. Something to think about tonight, perhaps.